Okay. There's no the.
It is a the.
What? I don't see a the on the box.
The
Oh my
Halloween
god.
tree.
It's hiding in the middle of the word. I was looking above and to the left.
Yeah, you're like JFK, all drunk
Above
and
and
shot
to
in
the
head.
left.
Ready?
Jackie O, please help me.
All right, guys, here we're going to talk about the movie The Halloween Tree. $1993 is The Halloween Tree. Lee, had you seen it before?
No.
This one was kind of a classic for me.
Is it near and dear to your heart?
I've only, I think, seen it once or twice, and it would have been in the 90s.
As a kid, right?
As a child,
I feel
yeah.
like I might have been too old / a dark-hearted bastard who didn't care about children's things anymore, like very quickly or something. Because I was still very young. I was like 9 years old, but I don't remember this at all. Didn't watch it. Have no memories or attachment to it whatsoever. I feel like you're like, oh, it stuck with me. It haunted my dreams.
It did stick with me, where I did not know the title of it up until maybe the last couple of years when we got it in stock here. But I remembered the concept of it, and there's some very deep things for a children's thing in this.
Oh yeah.
And it has a couple of names attached to this movie. We got Leonard Nimoy is the bad guy in the movie, and that's something interesting because he's not doing his Leonard Nimoy voice.
He's doing a voice.
I would never hire him to do voice acting, but as I looked into it, he's done some voice acting.
Exactly.
As voices, and not as just Leonard Nimoy, who I'm looking for.
Yeah, I think I might have seen Leonard Nimoy in the credits, and then halfway through, I'm like, when is Leonard Nimoy showing up? What's going on? It's very obviously him once you know who he is or whatever. But I was still, it's like he doesn't just sound like Spock.
No,
I feel like he should just sound like Spock all the time.
Kinda, yeah. And it's got the kid. What's his name? Something Keegan. Is it Noah Keegan? I can't remember his first name.
There's a few.
He's the kid from Teenage Caveman. He's in Camp Nowhere.
Yeah.
He was in 10 Things I Hate About You. He now runs, I think, a successful cult. Something along those lines.
Live your dreams.
But he's in this as well, and little things that pop up, and I'm like, oh man, little signs of
so
time.
this is animated, but these are voices, right? And I think one or two of the other kids went on to do something else, and the other ones did nothing, like TV, different stuff like that, random things, whatever. Yeah.
But great voice acting, good mixing, a fun narrator who's also the writer of this thing.
Ray Bradbury.
Yeah.
Famous.
Bradbury Award winning.
When you said a few names, I was like, yes, Leonard Nimoy and Ray. And then you mentioned some other kid. I'm like, fuck that kid. No, it's Ray Bradbury.
You gotta name the people that who they want.
I didn't realize. So he narrates it, but he also wrote it.
Yes.
And then adapted it. So he's a famous. I thought he was a sci-fi writer. I guess this is similar or whatever. But yeah. I remember some Ray Bradbury Presents stuff on some things from like a million years ago. So that's where my brain goes. But yeah.
But this is a fun tale of Halloween, classic animation. Not going to spoil it right now. We'll head over to the spoilers. We'll talk more about it. So if you've seen it or don't care, follow us over there. And if not, pull out now.
If you need a place to rent content, you better listen. We're Cannibal Video and we eat the competition.
All right, guys. So here we are for the spoilers of the Halloween Tree. So I really just have to reiterate, and what are the odds this dude could write this banger and also has a silky smooth voice that he could be a narrator?
I thought his voice was amateurish and not good.
No, I would pay for that voice.
Some say that on the day he was born, all the soda pop bottles in the world fizzed over.
He sounds very breathy and Wilford Brimley-ish, and I was like,
a famous actor, Wilford Brimley.
I was kind of
the speech spokesman for diabetes.
I mean, if you're good enough for diabetes, no. I actually had the thought he's fine, but he probably said, I wrote this shit. I have to be the narrator, and they were like, all right, fine. We're not gonna get a real narrator.
I have a feeling
you.
he auditioned blindly against 17 other. Professional narrators.
Yeah.
And he happened to win out. He won the day.
Optimus Prime, Winnie the Pooh, everybody else was in there, and he was just like, nope, we gotta give it to Mr. Bradbury.
He reminds me, and it's not the same guy, but the same cadence of voice, the same quality of speaker. That was the narrator for Rockadoodle and stuff.
He's got that.
He hits it for me, and especially it's in that pocket of animation style. I really love this early day. This is Hanna-Barbera. As they just switched over to not be we're making Fred Flintstone noises as we're fucking walking and stuff. There's no real token sound effects that were kind of throughout all their shit. But this is great. It was that Cartoon Network, like on the on some of the VHSs and DVDs.
This actually feels good. I agree, right? Because I'm, I like anime and like weird stuff and different things. And when I think of like Western animation, I think of like, oh, so it's like kind of bad? Like, what do you mean? And this to me is like, oh no, this is like good.
And the really smart ones with the wits, called it magic.
This is like like there were all these animated features back during the 80s more so I think, but during this time where they kicked it up a notch and did something.
Yeah.
And like you're mentioning the narrator, you're mentioning like sound effects, like this was produced kind of like a movie where like,
I agree.
Yeah, when they go out to like the field, you hear like crickets and noises and stuff,
crackling of
like,
leaves and bullshit.
Like they actually dub in sounds, and it's more of a movie, like a full production, than animation can often end up.
That's what really stood out to me, were like the characters' voices, because nobody felt like, in most cartoons, they're like cartoony voices.
Like, I don't know, guys, what the fuck?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this felt like more like, no, these are like actors' voices doing a thing. Like, this was voice acting, which not like, the over-the-top zany bullshit you got from normal things, which it like carried through this tone, which now as an adult, it's not really as creepy, but as a child, there's certain scenes like walking through like the catacombs in Mexico as like these like distraught faces where at certain frames look like they're almost out of like heavy metal, like they're like really grotesque looking faces, and just this higher level plot points.
This reminded me of the After School Special, where like it's like the kid is on drugs, and they're like, soon you're gonna have to take drugs just to feel normal. He's riding the roller coaster with like the cartoon characters.
It has that cartoon video all stars to the rescue.
Yeah, it had that era and that like feel to me. Of certain images, and like it's very different for every reason. But like Dark Crystal, like certain things where like it's hey, this is for kids,
but not for kids.
And then things happen in it where you're like, oh, and like maybe on paper or like the description is not as like it's like inappropriate or scary, but as like a kid you're watching stuff and you're like, yikes, your dead great grandfather just like on the table, like what's happening here?
Who's that? Our great grandfather.
Like for all intents and purposes, it is these four kids dealing with Leonard Nimoy, the devil.
Yeah.
Because he at time makes a point to take their years of their life, essentially selling their soul to him. And
Here then, chew and swallow and chew.
in return to get back their
the
their
devil
boy
slash
here.
Time Lord slash Lemony, not Lemony Snicket, the Parnarium officer.
I consider him
all
the
these
Vulture
crazy
from
things.
Spider-Man the
Yes.
Animated. Like he
Well,
has
he has a whole weird Crypt Keeper thing
Oh, yeah.
going on. Something's happening with him, but yeah.
But you may call me Mr. Moundshroud.
like but it's a fun thing. But that concept of the like I would give up my life to give more years to my friend here.
You won't miss it now, but 60 years from tonight, 72 or 80, when I come for payment, you may regret it.
And I remembered it a little worse than it was here. In this, it was the four kids all give up 1 year from the end of their life to give back their friend Pippin, or not a Pippin. It was some name that's
Pipkin?
like Pipkin.
Pipkin!
To give him life again. He died from having his appendix burst, and I recently had my appendix burst, and didn't even click that I could have died until a nurse said, "You're out of the woods." I'm like, "Woods?"
And I'm like, the woods with Mr. Moundshroud?
Yes.
Yes.
I like his name. What is it? It's like Carapace, something. Carapace clavicle.
Yes, I was gonna
Moundshroud.
say-
Moundshroud is the name. Carapace clavicle Moundshroud.
I kept making up other names, so I forgot his names. I was like, Capsation, Calliope, Munderfuck. Like it's
Yeah,
crazy
it's a
name.
weird
Yes.
name, and it's not particularly a scary name. It's just a weird name. Those are words. Like,
What has that quality of like, well, that's not your name. Your mom didn't like name you that, right? You're a weird demon from the fourth dimension or seventh dimension or something, right? Something's going on. And he has a little pocket watch that has fucking like
I like that.
time thing in it.
Which doesn't make sense
What's
that it
happening
can keep
there?
time.
And it all folds up in there. I'm
Exactly.
like, that's a pocket dimension. What are you doing? what's happening? No, but so like the ending is the one thing that I would tweak. I feel like it's missing a line.
Okay, what was
Because
that?
one of the kids says, "I'll give you 1 year," and then he clarifies, the shittiest year, the year at the end, and the guy's
From
like,
the end of my life.
yeah, and he's like, "Are you sure?" And then all the kids voluntarily jump in, but there's almost no reason for them to do that.
It does seem like
right?
that he was already on board,
Yes.
and they did just tip their hand
So-
early and give away life for no reason.
Well, what if I gave you something of value? Say, a year of my life.
So I wanted one in a line where he's like, time given is worth much more than time taken, but it's still not enough to save your friend. And then one of them goes, what if I gave a year? I'll give one too. Me too.
Take one of mine, too. And mine. I'm in.
And then they all, he's like, okay. And then he does it then. That would have made it like 10 out of 10 for me.
So if you asked me, I thought they gave away like 10 years. I thought
from
that
your
each
memory?
person gave
Yeah,
away
yeah.
10 years of the end of their life.
To add
And-
up like 1 to 1, right?
Yeah, to make up for having, a life again.
Yeah.
Even though that would still be a little short, but, what have you. I think that this could be adapted into one hell of a movie for like 30-somethings. Like pretty much this same...
So I'm like, years old.
Yes.
Okay.
So like the
Adults.
same type of a concept
Yes.
where like, they're supposed to meet up for this thing, like the leader of their group is missing, they follow this ghostly visage of the guy, and like it leads to the same thing, but ultimately where they have to give up, like say maybe 20 years, 15 years of their life to bring their friend back to get it, like, let's even if we just had 10, give away 10 years, and then you'd have something where like, like they do it, but there's like the monkey's paw twist here, where one of them's like, you didn't even have 10 years left, and then like, Pipkin comes back and he's like, where's John? John didn't make it.
Oh my God.
Like what? And like some really dark shit there.
Oh my God.
Right? I think
Because you
we
can
did
make it
something cool here.
feature length and have that trade happen earlier and not be the end and then do something else afterwards.
No, even if it's at like the very end, like it's some like thing with like these challenges. Like they go to Egypt.
Oh, he's been dead for 67 years.
So what's he doing here?
Once a year at the Feast of the Ghosts, we invite him out to sit with us.
They go to Mexico for the Day of the Dead.
El Dia de los Muertos.
The Day of the Dead.
They go to the like cathedrals in it was France. France.
Notre Dame. I think we've built Notre Dame.
What was the hell's the fourth thing? Oh, and they the witches in England or what have you.
What is this place?
Where are we?
When are we?
So like they could still do those things, but on each step, instead of it being this like learning about Halloween type of thing, it could be this hard challenge where like they almost die. Like it won't be easy. You must answer me these questions, type of thing, and like they have to go through these challenges, and then ultimately when they finally succeed and they all made it through with their each individual challenge in a unique and horrible way, one of them just dies, and like it's Halloween night, and there's like he just gets hit by a bus or some shit like right when he comes out, and it's over. Like when they think they've won, and it's all rest now on Pipkin. He's like, what? He's like, John's dead? We saved you, buddy. And like him not even 100% being sure that it's real. Like kind of like in this, he's like, I had a dream that all.
I had dreams about pyramids, Stonehenge, Paris, and Mexico. Like I said, thanks.
Like he's dreaming along with this thing.
The Wizard of Oz, it where like his soul, his spirit was there doing those things, but now it's like hazy and they don't remember, and it's gonna be this thing or whatever.
Or maybe in the adult version, he comes out of it and he's the only one that remembers.
Yeah. I was gonna say like this is almost begging for me for like a weird It thing where you do like a follow up once your rent is due, and he like comes back and now they're all like older and they're dealing with it again or something. Yeah, so it's educational, like you mentioned, right? We are learning about history. So I was instantly like, two things. I was instantly like, oh no, it's going to be 1993's version of history, and it's going to be all awkward. I think some stuff wasn't like accurate, but I think everything was fine. It's not super educational.
I did read after the fact that it might be to this day the most accurate one about the witches, the way they portrayed where like it's just that those were just intelligent people that weren't smart enough to realize called witchcraft and killed them for.
So, anyone too smart was called?
A witch!
Exactly.
I thought it was actually entirely based where I was like, oh, if you once you're smart enough, they call you a witch, and I was like, oh my god, like I feel like today that would get called out for being too woke and like and like gross.
kinda great.
And this is ancient. And I was like, that's amazing because they're showing real witches. They're showing like the nose and like the wart and mixing potions, but they're saying they were just so freaking smart. And you're like, all right, awesome.
Yeah, people all
Crazy.
looked like that back in the day.
That's just a hump. The
one that threw me was did the Egyptians really pull their dead out and have them sit at the table? I meant to look it up, but I did not.
I did not Google. Did the Egyptians keep the corpses of their and leave? Like I think mummification was for like the wealthy and the pharaoh.
Well, this wouldn't have been a mummy in quotes.
Then it's just a corpse. What are you talking about?
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, wouldn't this just lead to all kinds of bad things
you have
happening?
to like preserve
but they're
them
in like an
way.
arid desert climate. I don't know how much it would have festered. And,
I don't know about that. I did not Google that exact phrase, but I did Google whatever they say, like the day of like the night of the ghosts or something like that, because they have like their own thing, and that auto completed to something else, and that was a real thing, but it wasn't that at all. It was something else. The Festival of the Dead
in these years.
But no, I was worried like, oh, it's gonna be like totally like weird and like cringy about like history or something. But it's kind of light on the education and focuses more on
more the ride
on its plot. But it's cool. I was also thinking, oh, he's harping like you don't even know why you dress up like that.
Why are you wearing a costume of a witch? No thoughts, eh? Oh, I'm wasting my breath.
Why are you a skeleton? Why are you this? Why are you that? And I was like, oh, he's going to turn them into what their costumes are. And like, that's going to be like the thing. Because he instantly starts using magic. And I'm like, oh my God, you're using magic. But he doesn't. But they also do become their things. But he doesn't do that to them.
No, yeah,
it
just kind of falls into place.
The guy just pretends to be a mummy a little. And they all ride broomsticks. I'm like, okay, it's weird, whatever.
I didn't read the book myself. But from what I understand is there were 8 friends in the book with more costumes. And I think they go to more places, I'd imagine.
Yes.
But that's just me inferring based on the fact that it was that and cut down to these because animation, it's difficult and
that's the way
time is the thing.
Right.
It's not an incredibly long movie. It's like 70 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's with the credits and stuff. So it's a quick watch. But I do think this is a very nostalgic Halloween movie, and I don't say that in that it is nostalgic for me. I think that this will bring back a time period for people with just the animation style and all that good jazz. And there's some like highbrow concepts here. Like aside from just like the life-giving thing, you have this, like I said, like this devilish character takes them to France where they have to help complete the cathedrals. And
so why not finish building the cathedral with your feet?
Because he can't do it. He can't step on the hallowed ground that is this like church thing.
He also, like, it seems to be like the shadow of the cathedral he can't step into because he like notices he's in it and then like moves out of it. And then he has to call in storm clouds and then he's like, and then he can walk in.
Yeah, maybe there's some legend they don't on the nose for us.
But that's key when you're doing something, especially for kids.
Yeah.
Because people make fun of this or like call it out as like, oh, the plot hole. Why does this happen? And I'm like, that's awesome because kids think about stuff because their brains haven't been destroyed by Twitter or Facebook or whatever. Maybe, well, nowadays they have been.
Yeah.
But when I was a kid, your brain wasn't destroyed yet. So you'd spend like minutes thinking about something that you'd watched and trying to piece it together and like adding your own things. Like I did with that line about life having a ratio and not adding up or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That's what's important to do when for this. That's what makes them like great instead of just like nothing or something. And this has a bunch of that. This is awesome.
Yeah. There's a really like, oh, that's horrific. Like the boy Pipkin gets turned into a gargoyle for a moment.
Get me out of here! I'm scared! It's gargoyle language. He can only talk when the rain comes out of his mouth or the wind blows over his teeth.
And they go into this thing, which I had never heard about, was like the sound of like the wind or water running through the gargoyle is them talking and this and that. Yes. And he's talking through this mumbled way as the rainwater rushes through his mouth. And it's borderline horrific.
Okay, so like he's locked in this stone form, holding his soul pumpkin.
No, Pip, I won't let you go. No! That's it! Get the pumpkin!
Like it's raining, so like the water is dripping down, so it just looks like he is crying and just constantly vomiting like water, and then is trying to like communicate. It is sick. It is the animated, less horrible version.
My mind runs though when things happen, and I'm like, dude.
And you picture something from like Labyrinth where they do weird things. Like it has that evocative like this is terrifying like thing.
Oh, Pipkin, what's happened to you? I think I'm dying.
Like those type of things. There's a lot of little concepts here where I'm like, this is not necessarily a children's thing, even though, it's clearly a children's thing.
Yeah, but it's in that exact right. Like, I think this is worth watching, worth checking out. This is worth, because I hadn't, I'm not nostalgic for this at all.
Exactly.
I'm nostalgic for the time period, like you're saying, but like, I got something out of this, and I'm glad that I saw this, even though, this is not something that I like remember fondly.
No. I like little concepts like there's a part where they're taking the shortcut to try to find Pipkin very early on, and there's like a ravine they have to go down, and like the three of them can climb down, but the one has a bike and she just like trudges down the thing. And this reminds me of things as a kid where like when you look at something, it looks like the deepest ravine in the world. Like this is a cliff. This is sheer. I couldn't possibly go through this. And then like even just a few years later, you look at it and be like, oh, I can run up that. That's actually not ridiculous. And like I got that that immediate sense of like when they're doing because then she barrels down. You're like, okay, so that was feasible. She did ride her bike down this. There's cool little things too, like she's a witch, and on her bike she straps 2 brooms, and I'm just like little things like that. I'm like, that's very cool looking. Like you're working things out, and I'm like, that's an idea that a child could have went and did for the next year's Halloween. They very quickly do lose their masks and stuff because I think it's less things to draw.
Yeah.
I think that that's just why it happened, because he had one had like a monster mask, and without the monster mask, he is just Quasimodo.
Yeah, he's just wearing like a tunic. He's not
with
doing
a hump.
anything. Yeah, it's like okay.
Yeah, our witch lost her witch mask, which was rocking on the back of her head, which is extra things to draw.
Ha ha, very funny.
Our skeleton did not even have a mask, and then just somehow had the mask, and then lost the mask.
No, like, yeah, they ride gargoyles at one point, which is cool, but yeah, it ends up being, again, I'm not sure if I was hoping for this, but I wanted them to literally turn into temporarily. And I feel like the movie wanted that too, but it was like, nah, they're just pretending though, and it's fine or something, I don't know. But yes, I wanted him to like become a monster, something like that.
Yeah. I wouldn't have hated it. I would have we hit a couple of the classics. We didn't hit all the classic monsters type stuff.
Right.
Like there was no like Frankenstein-y thing. There was no which could fall into the same line as a zombie. There was no werewolf. There was no Draculas. There was no things like that. And I think that might have been characters in the 8 group.
I would assume, right? Yeah. And when they get to the skeleton, because now that I know it's been a history lesson and like an architecture lesson or something, I'm like, well, what was the lesson here? And they have the balls to have that kid be like, well, skeleton, fuck, I don't know, because if we face death like this, it like changes it and doesn't let it ruin our life.
Maybe if we face death eyeball to eyeball, it loses its power over us. It can't scare us.
Excellent, Tom.
And I'm like, oh my God. He's like philosophical about the meaning of death and stuff. And I'm like, oh, while his friend is ostensibly dying like back in the real world or whatever. I'm like, oh man, damn.
It's trippy. It's a little weird though, the whole through line of Pipkin running ghost-wise through these different stories and why he's hiding and then popping out here and there. But it's it's a children's movie, so it doesn't have to have so much.
And it hints at this thing where like Moundshroud can time travel between different Halloweens.
Where's he going?
Not where. When? 4,000 Halloweens ago.
Yeah.
Right? It's this weird thing where like he can go 4,000 Halloweens back, not just to any time, but it's like the Halloweens are like anchoring.
Or like any dead
his
holidays, it seems, because I don't think does Day of the Dead happen on Halloween?
Well, I think that I don't know. But,
any culture's Halloween
potentially,
because Ghost Spirit Egypt Day. I don't think is also on Halloween.
I guess that makes more sense. I took it to be like, oh, well, they used to celebrate New Year's Eve on this day of the year, so it wasn't Halloween, but it was the same time frame. But the other ones don't make sense, so it makes more sense if it's just whatever. But that's more interesting than just, oh, I'm just gonna take you back and show you history. It's like, why not go to the day before and fix that? It's like no, it's like a meaningful, something about that triggers something in my head. My imagination, which as I mentioned has been destroyed, was like revived by like that concept with the moon blinking and then the thing and
like skulls in the moon and all that jazz. There's always a little hidden.
The moon began to blink. Faster and faster it began to wax, to wane, until 1,000 times over it flickered.
We went this long without mentioning the actual Halloween tree. So it is a tree with jack-o'-lanterns that are the souls of all these people that either he has taken directly or have just ever died. I don't know how that works.
Well, it's like his job to like when people die, but on Halloween, I guess, or like the dead celebrate. Like I don't know if that tree grows jack-o'-lanterns all year for all the dead people and he harvests them because they all get swept away at the end, right? Like, what does that
Everything
mean?
except for Pipkin, who gets to keep his.
Because he didn't die.
What's weird though is that by letting him, but it just not blinking out of existence, by letting him keep his, it's gonna be his rotting soul on like the front porch.
Oh my gosh, he must be okay.
Like in a couple of weeks. That's weird. I know it's probably just the husk of what his soul
gonna
was.
say, I think it's empty
still
now.
a little weird.
Well, they do call it his soul fire pumpkin or vessel or something. Oh my God, what's happening?
We might be able to catch Pipkin, grab his pumpkin fire soul, and have a scavenger hunt as well.
Little things like the concept of they couldn't pay the rent for their graves, so they were shoved in this tomb here. And I'm like, oh, that's a little deep for a child.
Their families couldn't pay the rent on their graves, so the gravedigger put them down here.
That's dark.
Yeah, because like
So the
as a
grave
child, you
people
wouldn't even
buried them
think you pay
here.
rent. You'd be like, oh, they put you in the ground. That's a hole. Whatever. Well, you gotta pay.
And you're there forever. People come by and leave little rocks on them.
I remember saying out loud, "Harry Potter, eat your heart out," when that girl like was zipping around on that on that broom.
She catches a snitch or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know what year Harry Potter was even written, but I remember it being somewhere, like, I think a little after this. We'll see.
Really?
Not that she stole the idea of
early.
brooms and magic, but, you know, whatever.
No, JK's been exposed. She's a plagiarist.
Like, this movie fed into the thing that all child, like, you know, like, imaginations lead to, where you're like, I'm gonna have an epic adventure where I get to do these things that, like, never actually happens, but, like, so many movies, like make you think that that's a thing that eventually happens. You have this core group of friends, and so eventually you have to save the rec center, like, type of thing.
Yeah, eventually some bald chick shows up with, superpowers. It changes everything.
I think this also leads into, like, people thinking that, like, they can hold up their body weight. Like that they have a kite ride thing here where it is just like, you know, upper body, core strength, just holding on to these things.
Yeah.
And a single person holding on would be difficult enough, but our main boy, Mr. Tom Skelton there, is holding 3 bodies in a row.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so brutal. And like
and
there's magic later on that like just whisks them away, like bats carry them and he just flies them and they have brooms, whatever.
They fly on his cape at one
this
point, right?
It's just them literally holding on. You're like, can you give them a little magic assistance?
That kite is awesome because it's made of like the animal posters that turn alive and become animal parts and
from
all
a circus that was at their barn.
But that is like such a weird, crazy thing to put in there. Like hints at more, which is my core thing. But yeah, they go like it needs a tail.
A tail. We need a tail.
Yeah.
And then he grabs it, and I'm like, where's the tail, kid? And then it's like, wait, you're the tail? That's horrible. And then they all become this long tail. It's crazy. It's totally crazy.
It's crazy, but it's also lovable.
Something weird about that, yes.
Yeah,
and
that patchwork kite definitely has a look to it.
And that's super early where you're like, well, I'm not sure how this crazy man's magic works yet, right? But by the end, he's flying, and it's kind of using his cape, so I'm like, oh, the cape makes him fly. But then later, he gives the cape to the kids so that they can fly, and he just flies away. I'm like, you can just fly the whole time? What are you doing? This is crazy.
Yeah, he's a Kryptonian, you see.
He's got powers.
I like them doing the whole like parachute thing, all holding the corners and just zipping away.
And they go away. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of fun things in this movie.
I have one more thing.
Sure.
This is Fat Kid Erasure. The box only has the other 3 kids on it. Where's the fat kid?
Well, Wally wasn't good enough.
Wally didn't make the cut. He's not even on the back, I think.
Fat Kid Erasure.
Fat Kid Erasure.
Andrew Keegan. That's the name of the guy that plays the fat kid.
He plays the fat kid?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
I assumed he played the cool kid, whose name is actually literally Tom Skeleton?
Yeah. I didn't look how it was written. Maybe there are extra letters or less letters that don't make it actually skeleton. Like
the guy's
it could be skeleton.
He's like, why do you wear bones? And he goes, my name?
Who are you?
Name's Tom Skelton.
And I'm like, who? What the fuck?
He says something as he's putting on his costume that he puts on in like 1 second.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, it's time to live up to your name or some shit like that.
Tom Skelton, you're one lucky boy. A name like Skelton on a night like this.
But he says like, Tom Skeleton, and I'm like, okay, kid, cool it. Just because it's Halloween doesn't mean you have to like announce yourself as a skeleton or something. But yes, that's his name. That's weird. All by itself.
What's weird to me is they meet at a like 4-way stop.
All right, we made it. This is gonna be great. I'm ready for the treats.
And they're like, where's Pipkin? And then they go to Pipkin's house. And then from there, like they do this whole mystery, and they end up at his house again, where he has returned on the same night as having his appendix burst, and I guess magic, you know, fixed him up.
You are alive! Hooray! They took my appendix out, and for a while, they thought I was a goner. Imagine that.
But they still do say his appendix burst, so that's weird, that it wasn't just like, oh, it was indigestion, here you go home, son. And then they go home, and you see that girl go home like one turn away. Like she's the only one I copped, but she just turns from his house into a house that is visible from his and goes.
Then a great wondrous happy tiredness gathered in their eyelids and arms and feet. And the witch and mummy and monster and skeleton ran back to their...
Goes in, and if they were meeting to get Pipkin, it's weird that she went over here and then she was going to backpedal.
Yes.
These are the things you have to harp on.
These are not. This is. You want to make these animators show all this.
I just would have ended it. I wouldn't have
home.
animated that part at all. I would have just panned over to the tree and the
fine.
pumpkins leaving or something
whatever.
and been done. It's weird to do extra work for something that doesn't make sense.
Well, they just had him go home, so they just here you go, done.
Meh.
And the 4-way stop was just 4 kids 4 ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to see a live action version of this.
Who would you cast? No.
All the Stranger Things kids, because you just mentioned them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense.
Done.
If that was an anthology show, just have a Halloween tree season.
Halloween tree. MVP. All right, guys, that's our thoughts on this. Let us know in the comments below what you thought about it. Don't die in a fire, and we'll see you next time. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought about it. Don't die in a fire, and we'll see you next time.
If you want to support the show, head over to cannibalvideo.com, pick up some merch.
And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's something.
Whatever.
Fuck these motherfuckers.
If you stay there, you'll stay forever. Tourists will buy tickets to come look at you.
Cannibal Video has everything you need. A wide array of VHS and DVDs. We ate the competition, now it's only us. Our expert staff opinions you can really trust.